Released in 1991, Lotus Turbo Challenge 2 is the pinnacle of racing games on the Amiga. Building upon the success of its predecessor, the developers did away with the old racetrack design and instead opted for much longer tracks with a time countdown and checkpoint mechanic. There are 8 different tracks to race through, each offering different challenges such as weather conditions and road hazards. Other drivers on the road, most of them seemingly unable to drive in a straight line, attempt to hinder your progress by driving in front of you. Other more aggressive drivers actually try to run you off the road. Lotus Turbo Challenge 2 is still the best racing game ever released on the Amiga and one every Amiga fan should own. With a launch price of £30, the equivalent of £60 in today's money, Wings would have been considered what's now known as a AAA title back in 1990. Developers Cinemaware were best known for creating interactive movies, and they carried some of this over to Wings. By mixing their pedigree of interactive movies with high-octane action, they really created a gem of a game. There are 230 different missions available, including strafing runs, dogfights, and bombing raids. The story of life during the First World War is told between missions and really helps bring the game to life. The graphics of the game are excellent for a title released in 1990 and help solidify the game's AAA status. Wings is a brilliant game, it's got atmosphere, it's got action, and it's got loads of style, a game I'd highly recommend to anyone. In the early 1990s, graphic adventures were plentiful on gaming systems, particularly the Amiga, and Beneath a Steel Sky is up there as one of the best ever developed on the machine. The game tells the story of a young man orphaned and abandoned outside of a giant metropolis, brought up by a group of savages and hunted by the police. The aim of the game is to escape the city and return home to the Gap, a desolate area where you were raised. You and your trusted robotic companion Joey must tackle puzzles and challenges throughout the game. You'll have many questions during the game as not a lot is revealed to you and much is purposefully hidden. Fortunately, most is answered towards the end of the game. There are lots of NPCs to interact with to delve into the lore of the world, and the overall tone of the game is a very humorous one, something missing from a lot of other graphic adventures of the time. Quite simply, Beneath a Steel Sky is one of the best graphic adventures available on the Amiga. "100 years in the future, the world is run by giant corporations known as syndicates. As a young executive of a failing syndicate, it is your job to turn business around through a series of assassinations, kidnappings, and general violent behaviour. Using cryogenically frozen sleeper agents to do your dirty work, you control up to 4 of these agents on the game screen, instructing them to move, shoot, steal, and more. The game is unashamedly violent, and there will be plenty of innocent casualties along the way. That can't be helped in your push for total dominance. After completing one of the 50 missions in the game, you take over the territory of the syndicate you fought against, gaining their real estate and also their populace, a populace you can heavily tax to finance your dirty schemes. Don't tax them too much, however, or you'll have a revolution on your hands. The sheer size, violence, and huge amount of action make Syndicate a must-play game. A young scientist is experimenting with subatomic particles late one evening when lightning strikes and sends him into another dimension. We've all been there. This new world is a dangerous place and death waits around every corner. Fortunately, you get hold of a multi-function laser pistol that helps you traverse the brutal landscape and fight the various enemies of the planet. The graphics and overall aesthetic of Another World are very minimalistic and the game has no HUD whatsoever. This can be considered both a positive and a negative. It makes the game look very classy and unique, but it can be very confusing when the game doesn't tell you how to do anything and trial and error is required for much of the playthrough. Fortunately, there are multiple checkpoints and an unlimited respawn mechanic, making the trial and error gameplay more bearable. Another World is a classic in every sense of the word, with a superbly crafted game world, innovative game design, and layers of atmosphere. It served as an inspiration for other games for years to come. The first game of the now very popular strategy franchise was released on the Amiga in the mid-1990s. Essentially a game of 2 halves, one half featuring base building, research and development of new weapons, finance management and more, the other half focusing on combat and fighting off the alien invasion using your squad of special forces units known as XCOM. The game utilizes a turn-based combat system with each soldier allocated action points allowing them to move, pick up items, target enemies and more. After you've made all your moves, the aliens make their hidden moves and the game continues. The game maps are actually partly procedurally generated, meaning that no 2 playthroughs are exactly the same. Overall, UFO Enemy Unknown is a great game that launched a franchise and is still as fun to play today as it was 20 years ago when it was released. Lemmings is one of the most original games ever released. It's difficult to categorize exactly what genre Lemmings should be part of. It's part god simulator, part strategy game, part platformer. Regardless of what genre it's classed as, one thing's for sure, it's a gaming experience nobody should miss out on. The aim of the game is to guide the suicidal rodents through levels filled with dangerous pitfalls such as fire pits, lasers, pools of water, and much more. While the game isn't anything to write home about in regards to its graphical fidelity, the aesthetic of the game more than makes up for this, and the animations afforded to the little lemmings are fantastic. The soundtrack of the game is inspired, with some excellent chiptunes littered throughout the vast array of levels combined with quirky audio emotes from the lemmings themselves. It really brings the game to life. Lemmings is a wonderful game and something that everyone should play at least once. Flashback is more than just a video game. It's like playing an interactive movie, but in a good way. The game is a mixture of platformer, adventure, shoot 'em up and puzzle solving, with a variety of large levels to keep you entertained. The story is deep and intertwined, and the way the plot unfolds as you play is fantastic. The game is set in the year 2142, and the protagonist is one scientist, Conrad Hart. You discover that a lot of prominent people are actually alien interlopers. A loser's memory gets caught, gets away scenario ensues, and your task is to regain your memory and return to Earth to warn humanity of the alien invaders. The in-game graphics were phenomenal for the time, and the developers used a technique called rotoscaping that makes the game's sprites move as realistically as anything seen in a video game up to that point. Flashback was a real landmark moment in games development. It's entertaining, challenging, immersive, and thoroughly addictive. Certainly one of the best games on the Amiga and one of the best of all time. At its core, Fodder is an action strategy shoot 'em up. The game is military themed and based on shooting action, but with a strategy game style control system. The game consists of controlling a small squad of brave soldiers through 24 grueling missions, fighting enemy soldiers, destroying buildings and installations, rescuing hostages, and more. The game takes place across a variety of landscapes including barren desert, jungle, arctic tundra, and various other terrains. Fodder is incredibly challenging in the later levels, with some reviewers at the time stating that certain areas of the game are nearly impossible to complete. Suitably receiving many Game of the Year votes during its release, Fodder is a fantastic game well worth going back to. Secret of Monkey Island is a brilliant point-and-click graphic adventure game. The game is set in an alternate version of the Caribbean during the age of piracy. The player assumes the role of Guybrush Threepwood, possibly the best named character in gaming history. Guybrush is a young man who dreams of becoming a pirate and explores fictional islands while solving puzzles. The game is chock full of visual and text-based humour, charming music and whimsical scenes. The story is hilarious, albeit quite short, and the characters are presented in such a way that you cannot resist wanting to learn more about them. The controls and gameplay are relatively easy, but that doesn't detract from just how good this game is. Even with the straightforward systems, there's still 30 hours of gameplay to keep you busy, and you will definitely want to play it more than once. There is a ridiculous level of attention to detail throughout the game. You will miss things every time you play. If video games are about having fun and enjoying the experience, then you can't do much better than Secret of Monkey Island. Thanks for watching guys, please feel free to like and subscribe for a new top 10 video every week, follow me on Twitter at RetroBurk and click on the screen if you'd like to watch my previous video. See you next time.